Hi, this is Hallicrafters Rehabs, where Hallicrafters receivers get a rehabilitation, and sometimes I do too. So I just finished another video, and it went through the entire IF alignment of this SX-71 receiver, and I got it all off the camera and put it on the computer, and half of it wasn't readable. I'm not going to get any awards for cinematography. Basically, the camera was unable to pick up the detail on the spectrum analyzer and the schematic, which I threw up in front of the camera. So I have to use the improved methods, and we'll do that. We'll redo that video later. But I wanted to continue with the redesign, so to speak, or modification of the SX-71 to improve its sensitivity, and I'm not quite where I thought I want to be. And so in my previous video, let's see if I can do this in the camera. Yeah, I really should do it that way, but it doesn't fit well. Anyway, in my previous video, I'll tell you what, we'll do this on a tripod on a table. It works out a whole lot better. Catch you in a second. Okay, here we go. Now I drew it lengthways on this little Karl Rove-like whiteboard here, because it would just make it a whole lot clearer that way. And what I'm drawn is the second IF in the SX-71. There's the IF transformer, and then that's the 6SK7. This is the voltage setup, 229 volts on the plate, and I read about 148.6 on the screen, which is higher than in the schematics, because we lowered this value to less than 2,000 ohms. I forgot to write in this value. That's 270 ohms. Now, in the runs 1, 2, 3, and 4, only run 2 had this at 270. The rest of the runs had it at 1,000 ohms. And this resistor, which is also the same here, is just run differently than I drew it. This is at 680 ohms. I have already dropped it to 430. And this is at 2200 ohms, and I dropped it to 1,000. And these are the cathode voltages associated with that: 8.2, 6.4, 11.2, 9, and 9. Now, why they did this, other people can probably explain this better than I can. But what I've done, what I want to do, is I actually have 10 ohm resistors, and I'm going to put those in here. Now, as you can see in band 2, a 10 ohm resistor is basically a jumper, and band 2 is a jumpered, and it's 6.4 volts. So essentially I'm going to defeat the changing of these voltages with each band and just bring them all down to around 6.4 volts. And then we're going to see how the receiver responds from that. Now, right now, the receiver requires an outboard RF amplifier, a preamplifier, in order to basically be in the same competition with, shall we say, the SX-100 or the Japan radio. So I want to see how it's going to work at 6.4 volts on the cathode to this 6SK7. So let me go make that substitution, and let's see how that plays out. I should say that with like an Amco PCLP RF preamplifier, it's tracking about 2 to 3 dB below the SX-100 on the signals that come in. So let's see how this change will impact the receiver. Okay, now I have substituted two 10 ohm Vishay Technologies 2 watt actually metal film resistors. There's actually only one resistor that is involved in these three positions, and now there are two 10 ohms for that resistor and 10 ohms for that resistor. So on all bands except two, there's only a 10 ohm resistor, mostly a jumper. And so the total voltage, the total resistance would be 270 plus 10. There's 10 ohms in the choke at the sensitivity control, and a few ohms associated with the zero position on selectivity. And the result is very good. It's a very stable, and it still needs that preamplifier, but with the preamplifier it's actually beating the SX-100 in sensitivity. So this is just like crude measurements right now. I haven't done any minimum detectable signal determinations on either the SX-71 or the SX-100. That'll come later. So I feel like I'm done with the improvement of the sensitivity. However, there's still more opportunity right here if I get venturesome. So it really is getting to be a very good receiver at this point. So let's go take a look. Okay, so now with the reduced value cathode resistors on the second IF amplifier, this SX-71 in band 1 is actually receiving on my house shortwave antenna a Winston-Salem station at about S6 over here. And now of course S meters are not really, they're not calibrated like they pretend to be. But let's look at the SX-100, same station, right about the same. So when we get to doing actual minimum detectable signal measurements, they'll probably be comparable, which is really good for band 1. If we go to band 3, let's change this to band 3, and we'll go up to CFRX, Canadian Toronto station. That's at 6070 kilohertz. Coming in at about S5 at the moment, without any help from the antenna tuner up there. Where is it? There it is. That's actually not it. That's it. So that's not even in the circuit. And then we go to the SX-71. Let's see how that's going to do. Turn the volume down here. From not tracking as much signal, it still needs that preamplifier to compete, so which is telling me I'm probably going to put in a small solid state RF broadband amplifier for this radio. There's one on Mr. Carlson's lab. Let me tune it. Excuse me. 42 and a 20-year-old dog is 79. We just heard breaking news
come back to Clayton Greenway, that you shouldn't pay any attention to that. If you love your dog, you should love your dog regardless.
Volume down. The main thing is in later models of Hallicrafters, they put in the antenna compensator, which really does a lot to tune the antenna section of the radio to the specific area on the frequency, high frequency, where the signal's coming in, and makes, instead of having one setting, which is like setting a screw inside the antenna section for each band, you have the ability to tune it across that band, and so you get a better response with an antenna compensator or trimmer on these radios, and that's why so many people have put these Amico in the past. I had one 50 years ago, or however many years ago it was. These Amico PCLP preamplifiers somehow they just marry up very nicely with the SX-71. The SX-100 doesn't need it, and of course the Japan radio doesn't need it, and the SX-99s don't need it. So I'm thinking about putting in a preamplifier, and just a little single transistor broadband amplifier, just to boost up the signal to this SX-71. That will be later in all of the various evolutions. So that's it for this video, Hallicrafters SX-71, and I'm probably pretty close to finished with the mods. There might be some small improvement in reducing those 270 ohm cathode resistors in the 455 kilohertz IF sections. There's 3 of them, and if you reduce those down, you might get a little better response. I'll think about that one. But at any rate, this radio is performing very, very well, and I'll do an update with all of the modifications I did to improve the sensitivity of this thing in a future video. This is Hallicrafters Rehabs. Thanks for watching.